Hello. Today we're going to be talking about cognitive psychology, but more importantly, the neuroscience behind it. Cognitive psychology is the study of internal and mental processes, or in other words, it's the study of the brain on all the things that go on inside of the brain. Studying the brain is important because it helps us better understand people with mental illnesses or psychiatric disorders. It also can help us treat them and see how they were thinking when they decided to make certain decisions or lack of impulse control, things like that. Studying the brain shows us where we can alter our medication or a form of treatment for these type of people. The brain is in charge of many things, such as perception, thinking, memory, attention, language, problem solving, and learning. With the brain being in charge of so much, that also leaves there to be a lot of room for error. And so that's why, again, it is very important for us to study the brain. So let's get into it. The mind is what the brain does. The brain has processes rather than feelings. So your brain itself is not going to feel happy, it's going to be a brain process. So when you see something that brings you joy, really all it is, unfortunately, is just a brain process. Cognitive neuroscience. Cognitive neuroscience is a discipline to study cognition from the level of cranial nerve, focusing on neural mechanisms of perception, selective attention, memory, language, emotion, and consciousness. Let's break that down. Cognitive neuroscience. Let's break it down into three separate words. We're going to take cognitive, turn it into cognition. We're going to take neuroscience and then split that off into neuro and science. We're breaking this down so that we can better understand it. Cognition is our understanding, neuro is our nerves, and in this case, we're going to be mostly focused on the nerves of our brain, and science, study through observation and experiment. Let's move on. Why is neuroscience important? The brain is in charge of our personality and all the other things that make us unique, so it's quite important to know why we do things. There are many things that can alter our brain, such as tumors, sleep deprivation, exercise, lack of nutrition, caffeine, drugs, trauma, and a number of other things. Let's get into how, in a certain case, a tumor really affected a man's life and career. Domenico Mantelio was a pediatrician who was on trial for pedophilia because he had touched small children. And so arguably scientific experts say that this behavior was a result of his tumor. So had he not have this tumor in his brain altering the way that he processes and impulse control and all these things, then he most likely would not have committed the pedophilia. Now we're going to take a look and see what trauma can do. So in this case, we're going to be talking about Phineas Gage, who was a railroad worker that endured great trauma to his brain, which completely altered his personality, and he had no impulse control. He went from being able to hold his tongue to just saying everything. He was quite unpleasant to be around, and so that really altered him. Now that we talked about a few negative things, let's get into some things that can help your brain. We're going to move on to exercise. In an article by Dr. Kurlik, she found that physical training enhances cognition through the process of neurogenesis and the hippocampus. She found that exercise such as aerobics greatly increase the number of new neurons that are produced in the hippocampal formation. And so seeing that there are things that can harm your brain, I think that we should also arm ourselves with the knowledge to know of things that can help us grow. And so let's move on. That was from the Neuropharmacology, volume 64, 2013.